Welcome to Golden Girl, a space where we dive deep into health, healing, connection, and community. I'm your host, Becca Golden, and this podcast is all about sharing and documenting my journey. Each episode, we'll discuss topics like health and wellness, what I'm learning in therapy, work-life balance, relationships, community, and all the ways I strive for more aliveness and presence every day. In today's episode, we talk about Madeline's health journey and why she decided to start working with my functional health practitioner, Talisa. Some of this will be educational. We talk about minerals, heavy metals, binders, bitters, and some protocol basics. We also talk about the discomfort of sometimes feeling disconnected from yourself. And how do you know what's normal? We talk about hormonal birth control and the importance of making educated decisions about your body. And I hope you stick around for the end because we also discuss the most important topic out of everything, which is what is the end goal with all these protocols? And what does this look like over time? Do I need to be on supplements forever? You'll hear us answer those questions and more on today's episode. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Golden Girl. This episode is going to be Madeline and me talking about health things. Madeline's been a huge supporter of my health journey, and she's also been along for the ride with me through all the ups and downs. So we're going to dive in and talk about Madeline's perspective on some of this and wherever else it takes us.
I think, if I want to even consider my health journey in parallel with yours, because I think that when we look at our own lives and our own health, it's so easy to want to compare ourselves. I think because we want to have perspective that other people have, or we want to find common ground with other things other people are experiencing. But even something that you had mentioned in your story is that, you experience the things for yourself and it's just your reality. Like, oh, this is how I feel today, and this must be normal, or this must just be my life right now. And until you hear about what other people are experiencing, you have no idea if what you're feeling is good or bad. And I don't even want to use those kinds of descriptors because it's just experiences. But you want to feel like you're doing things that are surrounded by wellness and surrounded in a positive energy. And from hearing other people's perspectives, it really helps ground your own. And so that's why I'm excited and have been happy to be hearing your successes and trials and tribulations, because you do such a good job at giving yourself milestones and measuring things. And I think for me, for someone who's more kind of in the middle in a lot of ways and still learning, like, where am I feeling in terms of good or bad today? Or where am I feeling in terms of high energy and low energy? Sometimes it's hard for me to answer those questions, but learning what you have felt and the way you're measuring things is helping me frame how I look at myself too.
Thank you. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that.
I feel like you are the health and wellness expert compared to me, because I feel like a novice. And you've had a long journey of identifying symptoms and understanding what they mean, and you're a long way from learning what this means for you. And I have had a much shorter story, if I can even call it a story. And I really just decided to kind of jump in at the very tail end of where your journey was and say, I'm going to meet with this practitioner and see what happens for me, because you had such a good experience. And so I met with Talisa probably only 3 weeks ago. And in terms of my health in general, I consider myself pretty active, pretty healthy. I feel good on a daily basis for the most part. But Talisa's health intake form was the most comprehensive and unique health intake form I've ever taken, because the questions were categorized kind of based on body system type. Like, here are questions that could relate to your liver function, or here are questions that could relate to your nervous system function. And I've never been asked questions in such a pointed and concerted effort manner. And I was really impressed just by this questionnaire of trying to evaluate my health in a really well-rounded manner.
Can you tell us a little bit about you as it relates to anything that you think is relevant to your health? Just at a high level, what has your experience been with health and your body so far? And what were you looking to get out of working with Talisa?
Sure. My first instinct to react to your question is about my athletics. Athletics is my first instinct to answer that question. And I imagine people listening may think, oh, I was going to answer by talking about my mental wellness, or I was going to talk about my emotional wellness. But my instinct is to say, oh, these are all the physical things that I've done. But I almost think that the physical things that I've done are so much less related to my well-being. And I think that's what I'm trying to learn is like, can you even just ask your first question again? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, the question is to give everyone context for where you're at. People who don't know you, they don't know what kind of job you do, what kind of activity level you're at, how you eat, what your stress level is throughout the day. Like, I could interview anyone for this podcast and their answer would be very different. And to your point, you don't really know what's not normal until you hear about someone else's experience. So just to let people understand a sense of who you are and what your lifestyle looks like so that they can use that context as you go into what your health goals are.
Sure. So I'll start by saying I played sports as a kid. I played soccer casually. I figure skated competitively. I started rock climbing in high school and I ran cross country. So I was active. I moved to Austin when I graduated from college. I started rock climbing and my health in college was pretty poor. And I even could tell that then. I ate dorm food. I ate fast casual food that was not healthy. I didn't really cook well for myself. And I had enough energy, but I think I was very bloated. That was my number one symptom, was very bloated and fairly constipated, if we can, whatever phrase we want to use on this podcast.
We can talk about constipation.
Great. So again, too, I don't know what a typical amount of bowel movements is for a given person, but I do know that I felt bloated and I felt like I was not having enough. And that was basically my symptom identification, but I had no idea how to resolve it. So when I graduated college, I went to a gastroenterologist and I almost got a colonoscopy at the age of like 18, which is pretty dramatic. For someone who is in generally good health, I was not evaluating my diet with this gastroenterologist. Kind of the first step was going to be to do a colonoscopy. And thankfully, we never moved forward with that path because in hindsight, that's a fairly invasive physical procedure that was over the top in terms of a diagnostics. So I never did the colonoscopy, but...
Is that why you didn't move forward? Because you felt like it was over the top?
Like, I was at that point of my life where I was like too old for the pediatrician, but I didn't have a primary care person and I was not living in Illinois really anymore and I just moved to Austin. It was like kind of in that weird interim and I think my mom and I just didn't schedule it. I was probably given the prescription like you should consider pursuing this and I kind of just let it fall off. Like I didn't prioritize it and I'm glad that I didn't. And the reason I'm glad that I didn't is when I moved to Austin, I started working at a solar panel distribution company, and two of my coworkers were hippy-dippy vegetarians. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm at this hippy-dippy company. Like, I'm going to try to be a vegetarian too. And early on, I started feeling better. I was still a little bloated, but it wasn't as dramatic. And I actually started taking a lot of pictures of my food, and one of my coworkers was like, well, why don't you just make a food Instagram? So early on in 2016, I made a food Instagram called Macri Eats.
Oh, yes.
And it was dismal. The food was not good looking. It was like me trying to be healthy and not really have any direction on how to make a good, healthy meal. But I kind of transitioned from vegetarian into vegan pretty quickly early on. So I would say in mid 2016. And today I would still consider myself mostly vegan, not super strict, but I try to eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit and a lot of nuts and, generally consider myself a healthy eater. And I poop once a day, which is a big deal. I think that that's an important thing to mention is that I don't feel bloated. I don't have stomach aches and I poop basically once a day. Because that wasn't the way my life was in the beginning, I can tell now that I feel so much better. And to answer your question really originally is why did I start talking to Talisa is that ever since I started menstruating, my periods have been very heavy. And the reason I would consider it very heavy is like on day 1 or day 2, I would go through like a super tampon every 2 or 3 hours, which was disruptive to my life. That felt like it was too much. And the first thing I did to try to remedy that was go to get acupuncture, because I had heard that acupuncture can sometimes help with hormonal imbalances or menstrual cycles. So I went to 3 acupuncture sessions within a month right before my next period and didn't really do a whole lot. I would say I still have fairly heavy bleeding and I still get headaches in the beginning of my cycle. And so with meeting Talisa, she asked me a lot of other questions too about, have you ever been considered anemic, which I had in the past, but the solution had been just, oh, let's take a multivitamin that includes iron. Not, oh, your iron depletion, how is that related to your cycle? And how is that related to your bleeding? And let's like dive into that more. So with talking to Talisa, we haven't really gone down the avenue of like focusing on hormonal health, but we've talked about minerals because minerals are the foundation for everything with hormonal health included. So my biggest goal of meeting with her and going through our first 3 months of mineral protocol is to get my menstrual cycle kind of in check. My cycle is regular. It's pretty much every 28 days, and I don't really have major symptoms other than the bleeding, but that was my initial reason to start evaluating my health. So I'm going to figure out what things mean over time, little by little, as a health novice. But I'm excited.
I'm so excited for you. Thank you for sharing all that. I didn't realize that you only started being a vegan in 2016.
Yeah.
Because I've only known you as vegan. And you say mostly vegan, not that strict. I would say you're vegan, not that strict.
I think people who label themselves as vegan really consider it a lifestyle choice, not a diet choice. They believe in animal welfare first and foremost. And I do believe in animal welfare, but based on my lifestyle, I have items that are made out of wool, with which many vegans would say wool, unless you know it's coming from a really good source, can be harmful to the sheep when you're shearing them. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm really not. I care about animals, of course, but I haven't gone and evaluated the like animal welfare levels of wool of items that I'm buying for everything like that, which I think if you really want to be that dedicated, you are.
Okay.
But I don't eat cheese, really. I don't eat eggs, really. But sometimes if I want a scone and there's milk and an egg in it, I will just eat it. I think some of the irony about veganism is that it's about compassion, but then again, some vegans have a hard time being compassionate with omnivores who eat everything. And it's like, compassion is really important. Compassion for yourself and compassion for the world and compassion and patience for everyone. So I'm just taking it a day at a time. And I usually don't eat animal products, but when I do, I don't beat myself up about it.
Good.
Yeah.
Other than your menstrual cycle, before you reached out to Talisa, would you have classified yourself as having pretty good health?
Absolutely. I go to bed before 9 almost every day, and I wake up at 7. And I feel well rested, and I have energy throughout the day, and I exercise usually in the mornings, and I'm happy, and I have a good social life, and I feel all in terms of the whole picture of wellness well. Yeah. And I think there have been times in my life where I wouldn't go so far as to use the like phrase depression, but there have been times where I felt less than myself. And it's hard to put words to what that looks like, but even this one time, I was on this vacation with my friends, and we went to Hawaii for my friend's birthday bike packing trip. And it was one of the best vacations I've had in my entire life.
This was recently, right?
Very recently.
Yeah.
In October. And I remember I just had this feeling like I'm in this place with these really wonderful girls in this really stunning, beautiful place, but I feel a little bit like I'm not enjoying myself as much as I should be. Like I'm not feeling as full as I could be right in this moment. I definitely felt disconnected from my sense of self and my sense of joy. And again, learning how to identify that feeling and just sit with it. Like I definitely just said, I'm not going to tell myself to feel better. I'm just going to experience what I'm experiencing, but it's still hard to know like what describing that is like. And I think whenever I have feelings like this occasionally, and I usually just sit with it, and then I feel better the next day. But even though I consider myself well and vibrant, you know, when you do projects, you go all in and like you really dedicate yourself to things. And I feel like sometimes when I do things, I'm a half in kind of person. Like even in my sports, I was never elite. I was like pretty good, but I was never amazing. I've always considered myself like above 50%. I'm not in the bottom half, but I'm barely in the top half of a lot of things in my life. And I always kind of felt fine about that. Like I never needed to excel, but it's interesting because when I consider myself like a fun and optimistic and curious person, when you feel slightly less strong about those emotions, you feel like you're not living your full best self. And I'm still, again, trying to learn how to put words to those feelings. But when we were talking the last time and I was getting really riled up, it makes me feel good to know that I'm getting riled up about things because I feel strongly about them. And I think feeling strongly about things means that you care and have conviction. And being apathetic or not super opinionated about things is much more passive. And I want to feel present and active in my emotions and in how I understand myself. And it's definitely been a process.
Well, and especially if the version of yourself that you know best is a version that is always so excited and very curious and has so much passion, and then you're missing that suddenly, I think that can feel really strange.
Yeah.
Like someone else's normal might not be those things, and that's okay for them. But for you, if that's not your normal, then it makes complete sense that it would feel foreign to you.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that it would feel really good for you to feel those things again, too.
Yeah.
I definitely experienced that this last year and a half when I was in the thick of my whole health journey. It felt really weird that I wasn't inspired. It wasn't that I was just too tired to do a project. Like, I didn't have any inspiration to do a project. I'm used to looking around a space and seeing 100 different possibilities of all these crazy, wild ways that it could be redone into a more colorful, wavy, swirly, crazy version. And for the last year and a half, 2 years when I was focused on my health, I didn't see any of that. And that was really scary because it felt like this isn't what I'm used to because it was not my normal.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got a spark of inspiration, I was so excited because it felt more like myself again.
Yeah. Well, and I think I would describe it as just an absence. It's like there's your normal excited, like what you feel like is you moving 100% forward, and then there's an absence of that. And you want to be on the good side, not on the lacking side.
Yeah, I think there's like a spectrum of absence of it or fullness of it. And there were also times where I was feeling different things that were not me.
Okay.
But it wasn't just absence of me.
Okay.
Like PMDD episodes are a really good example. Okay. So PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Okay.
It's that really intense version of PMS. I always describe it, for me, it's like somebody takes my brain and puts it in the microwave and microwaves my brain for 30 seconds. And then puts it back in my head because my brain actually feels like someone else's brain. It's like my brain in the upside down.
That's not good.
It's not good. And it's not just absence of self. It's like different version of self. And that happens to a lot of menstruators who get PMDD. They will experience this completely different version of their brain that doesn't feel familiar. And it's really scary.
Yeah.
But we've gotten way sidetracked because we were going to talk about you and your minerals.
Yeah.
So you felt like you had a really good level of health.
Yeah.
Aside from your period, which was very heavy.
Yeah.
And then because I had such great success with Talisa, you decided to reach out to Talisa and do a hair tissue mineral analysis.
And the hair tissue mineral analysis is just looking at a myriad of minerals, being salt, magnesium, potassium, manganese, iron, zinc, copper, other heavy metals, and looking at the values of these minerals as individuals and the values of them as ratios. And that these values of the minerals indicate different levels of your well-being, I guess. So this is what your body has, this is what it's lacking, and basically, here's how we're going to start the remedy. The first protocol is a custom mineral blend based on the minerals I'm specifically lacking. So it has different ratios of salt, magnesium, calcium, etc.
Yeah, the custom mineral blend, basically this company that like you send the hair tissue mineral thing off, they come back and they give you this huge report and it has all of the mineral levels, all the ratios. And then Talisa, this practitioner that we both work with, interprets it for you. And she says, oh, wow, I see this ratio all the time in my other clients who experience X, Y, and Z. This one over here, it looks like it's horrible, but don't worry, that is like that on everybody's tests, and it's not actually a bad sign. This over here looks good to you, but it's actually a red flag because in correlation with this other thing, it's like there's so much complexity to it, and she is a mastermind and she knows what all of it means.
Yeah.
And then she takes that information and orders a custom blend of powder. So it's basically, it's all these minerals and stuff. It's a supplement, but it's in a big canister of powder. And within that powder, it's not just one supplement. It's a powder that contains like 10 plus vitamins and minerals and supplements and whatever else. And you can select to put different things in there, but it's created with the exact ratios and amounts of everything that you specifically need. So this one that you're taking, this custom mineral blend, that's what we mean by custom mineral blend. It's like a scoop of powder that has the exact amounts of all of these different things in it.
So with the minerals, they're kind of, I feel like there's 3 parts of this analysis. There was, here's the state of your body's minerals, and we're going to supplement more to get you to a higher level for things you're lacking. But then there is the binder, which the binder is to help you detox the things that you're trying to get rid of.
Yeah, if you picture the periodic table of elements, all the elements on there, some of that's minerals, and some of that's and some of it's metals.
Yeah.
Heavy metals in your body mimic minerals. There are heavy metals that your body might pick up from different sources in the environment. Like an example is that a lot of antiperspirant deodorants contain aluminum. So if you have used antiperspirant deodorants your whole life that you haven't really been super careful to find one that's aluminum free, then you're applying something with aluminum onto your pores every day. So you might not realize it, but over time, you might have accumulated quite a bit of aluminum in your body. There's also heavy metals in a lot of different food sources. There's heavy metals all over the place. And your body has detox processes built in to eliminate those things from your body. But depending on your level of exposure to those heavy metals and depending on your levels of minerals that the heavy metals mimic, that could determine your ultimate mineral makeup. So I don't know off the top of my head which mineral the aluminum would mimic. Can I actually look that up really quick? Because it'll make way more sense for my example.
Well, look it up. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if we're looking at the minerals as they relate to my periods, I was on hormonal birth control from age 17 to 27. And I really didn't think anything of it. It was something that I was prescribed to handle my teenage acne and heavy periods. And it really cured both of those, to be honest, which was good at the time. But I know that long-term hormonal birth control exposure can be harmful and it can lead to blood clots. Again, I'm not an expert in these things, but I decided to go off it cold turkey, just randomly, kind of in my 20s. And Talisa had said that taking hormonal birth control for a long time can cause copper toxicity. And copper is a heavy metal. And the copper toxicity can interact with your hormones to some extent. So I know that likely going into that mineral analysis, that copper was going to be something that I wanted to look at and analyze and try to detox so that I could get my period back to normal.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was also on hormonal birth control for many, many years. I didn't know that being on a hormonal birth control pill, it like takes your mineral, it zaps your minerals.
Oh, interesting.
So if you're taking hormonal birth control pills, no matter what kind of mineral intake or nutritional intake you have, it's going to be depleting your minerals in some capacity. And this is something that I'm really passionate about is informed consent. I think anybody who wants to be on a birth control pill should be on a birth control pill. I think that it's an incredible invention and it's a really wonderful tool. I think it's a tool that menstruators are not given very much information about. And so informed consent means that before you're actually prescribed this birth control pill, you should feel like you have a really good understanding of all the different ways that it might impact your body before it's just given to you. And unfortunately, the birth control pill is just given to very young menstruators who have no idea the potential side effects, and their parents don't know the potential side effects. And
it's also very easy to get now.
It is easy to get, which is great. I like that. I think that it should be easy to get. I think it should be extremely accessible because it really helps so many people.
Yeah.
Like, especially, even for me, I had endometriosis and PMDD, and then I went on birth control, and both of those things went away. And I know it's life-saving for so many menstruators who have debilitating symptoms of various conditions, whether it's PCOS or endometriosis or PMDD or a wide variety of other things that it really helps with. So I think it's such a great tool, but people are given birth control without understanding the impacts that it has on their body as a whole. I was never told that it can be depleting your nutrients.
No.
And so
me neither.
Yeah. And it maybe if you knew that, maybe you would have been on a binder to get the copper. Maybe you would have been taking a multivitamin instead of just to replenish your iron, but to replenish whatever else. Also, hormonal birth control pills are really hard on your gut lining. Yeah. And so making sure that you're taking care of your gut lining and your gut microbiome as a whole if you're on birth control pills.
Essential.
That's not something that anybody tells you about, but it can be really beneficial.
Yeah.
So that was just my little birth control rant that I wanted to go on.
Good.
And then I feel like there was another thing I wanted to say.
That, I think so many of those things could have come up in my mineral analysis that I would have had no idea.
Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to say.
Okay, great.
The hair tissue mineral analysis is your hair. It's like you try to get as close to your scalp as possible. You cut out like an inch of the hair that was closest to your scalp. And what they're analyzing is whatever minerals ended up in your hair tissue. But when you have heavy metals that are entering your body or that your body is absorbing from the environment around you, the heavy metals sometimes are pretty stuck in your body. Okay. Like copper is a really good example of one that is very hard to move out of your body. Okay. When I did my first hair tissue mineral analysis with Talisa, she said, you might not see any heavy metals come up. And it doesn't mean that you don't have heavy metals in your body. It might just mean that your body's not letting go of them yet.
If they're showing up in your hair, why does that mean that your body's giving them up?
If your body's hanging on to it, then it's not going to be in your hair because it's in your body.
Okay.
So it's going to stay in your body. It's not going to come out in your tissue.
Okay.
I think something like that.
Okay.
I don't, we'll ask Talisa about that, but it's something along those lines.
Okay.
So bringing this back to where we left off with the conversation about heavy metals, an example is that cadmium and lead have chemical similarities to calcium and magnesium.
Okay.
So let's say you are getting a ton of cadmium and lead, which are both heavy metals, from various sources in the environment that you're not aware of. Like they found lead in your favorite protein powder. If you have been exposed to all these heavy metals in your environment and your body has them in your body might think that cadmium and lead are calcium and magnesium. Yeah. But then when your processes actually go to use the magnesium or use the calcium, they can't because there isn't any, because it's actually cadmium and lead. So that's why heavy metals are really tricky, because your body might perceive them as being minerals, which your body needs for processes. But once you start to actually remineralize, when you start to take the right minerals that your body needs at the right amounts and start balancing out these ratios, that is when your body will eventually start to let go of the heavy metals. Okay. So on my hair tissue mineral analysis test, the very first HTMA that I did, I didn't have really any heavy metals showing up, but I was like, I probably have a lot of heavy metals that just aren't showing up yet.
Yeah.
And I have no minerals, so my body's probably not letting go of heavy metals because it's trying to hold on to anything it can. Second round of the test, I did another HTMA. Still not really any heavy metals.
Really?
This third one that I did, the mercury is really high.
Okay.
And so finally my body is starting to let go of mercury.
Okay.
And I bet on my fourth one, which I'll do in probably another 3 months, there's probably going to be even higher. And over time, you start to get rid of all of that.
Okay.
So now we'll talk about the binder. And the binder is really important because as your body is remineralizing and replenishing these mineral
And I
stores.
want to look up the binder type because I think it's really cool.
zeolite.
But zeolite, I want to talk about what that is because it's so cool.
Okay.
The concept of it.
Okay. Can I talk about what it does?
Yeah, but it's zeolite. Do you know how to pronounce the second word?
I don't have the same kind.
Clinotiolite?
I don't know what kind mine
Oh, okay.
is. That's a different type.
Okay.
Remember that one didn't work for me.
Well, and let's talk about that there are different types of binders.
Yeah. Okay, so as you're replenishing your mineral stores, let's say your body starts to let go of heavy metals, you don't want those heavy metals to then recirculate through your body. If your body's letting go of it, you take this binder and it basically attracts like a magnet. This zeolite is like a magnetic type of a powder. It attracts the heavy metals to it. And then because you're swallowing this powder, it moves through your GI tract and then you basically just excrete the heavy metals so that you're not having them recirculate your body. And that's the same if you take any kind of binder, like activated charcoal is a really good one. That's the same that you would want to take for any kind of mycotoxins, which are toxins that are from mold. They give binders, I think, in hospitals if you overdose on stuff. And like different, that might not be true.
No, but that makes sense.
But like activated charcoal is something that absorbs toxins. Yeah. So there's lots of different types.
And the other thing that you mentioned to me before I started taking the binder is that you want to take it after you've eaten a meal with enough time to digest so that it's not actually taking the nutrients out of your food. Because if I eat a healthy dinner and then immediately after I take a binder, the binder is going to be binding the nutrition from my meal and excreting that. But I really want to be detoxing the things that are stored in my body that I no longer want rather than the food that I've just eaten. So I've been taking it at least 30 minutes after dinner and right before I go to sleep so that while I'm sleeping, my body can start to excrete or detox, whatever word you want to use.
It'll be like while you're sleeping, the binder is attracting anything in your body that you're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
So that when you do have your daily poop, it
goes away.
There. Yeah.
There you go.
Binders are a big conversation. So like if you're listening to this and you're thinking that you want to take a binder based off of this discussion, this is in no way thorough enough for you to be able to make a decision about like what kind of binder and what to be taking. But this is a good sign for you to start looking into it and like talk to a functional medicine practitioner about it, do some research. There are multiple types of binders. There's also different types of zeolite. So we're both taking zeolite. We're taking a different kind. The kind that I take, I actually can take it with food. I don't, but it's a specific kind that I can take with food. But before I was working with Talisa, when I would do infrared sauna, I would take 3 activated charcoal pills before I would get into the sauna.
Okay.
And I would say like in general, activated charcoal's generally pretty safe and pretty well tolerated and pretty broad. So if you're listening to this and you're like, screw it, I'm just going to take it. I don't care what they say. Like, we are not healthcare practitioners. No. We are just human beings and we can't give medical advice.
Well, and I'll say this too. The reason I especially don't want to give medical advice is because I'm only taking the binder because I'm also taking this custom mineral blend to replenish me at the same time. So if all you're doing is trying to detox the things that you don't want, but you're not giving yourself the things that you need, it's like not a good equilibrium. I'm trying to keep this balance of adding what my body is lacking while simultaneously detoxing the things I no longer want. But it needs to stay in balance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's why like when I was so depleted of all my minerals and I wasn't producing hormones because of that, I didn't want to just get started on a binder because even if I did have high levels of mold in my body, getting started on a binder would have just caused my body to have more processes to have to keep up with.
Yeah.
So it was really important to remineralize while I was taking that binder.
Yeah.
But I will say activated charcoal is a generally pretty safe one. Like if you've been out drinking all night, I used to do this when my hangovers started getting really bad. I would take activated charcoal after drinking because I heard that supposedly it would like attract the toxins and make your hangover less bad.
That's such a good point though.
It's like, it's pretty safe.
And even if you use the combination of like, okay, I just drank a lot, which is you're drinking, which is sort of, a toxin.
Alcohol is a toxin.
And then the reason why we also take an electrolyte, like, oh, I want to drink Pedialyte, or I want to drink Liquid IV or Element or Gatorade, like, oh, it's because it's giving you minerals. It's giving you the nutrients that you need while you're trying to detox at the same time. Like, those do kind of go hand in hand, and I literally never thought about doing those at the same time in this moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I was on keto, anytime I would drink and then take activated charcoal before I'd go to bed. And then the next morning, drink electrolytes all day.
Yeah.
Which is essentially
minerals,
binding the toxin and then remineralizing the next day. Yeah.
The last step of this analysis from Talisa is then there was the other category, which was kind of the miscellaneous hodgepodge of pseudo over-the-counter stuff.
So, like, the first category being the minerals. Oh, you're talking about your protocol. Okay,
yeah,
so
it's like I'm putting them in 3 categories.
Okay, so in terms of the 3 categories of the protocol, category number 1 is the minerals themselves.
Custom mineral blend. Yeah, so that's step 1, and that's what the first thing I started doing when I got this report back. Step 2 was a couple days and I started the binder. So now I'm taking 2 things at once. I've been doing this for a week. Now I'm starting to do the other stuff, which was on my list of items. It was an amino acid blend, the bitters, which I haven't started yet because I wanted to talk to you about the bitters, and then a reproductive health supplement also. So in addition to these, the custom mineral blend and the binder, I had this, it's like maybe 4 or 5 other supplements that I still need to introduce into my life that I haven't decided when or how much, or if I have a given dosage. If it says 3 pills in the morning, do I want to start with 1? And that's kind of where I am today.
So the reason that you have that custom blend and then the other things,
yeah,
that is because when you mentioned that Talisa's intake form, it was so holistic.
Yeah.
So you were going to her for heavy periods.
Yeah.
Obviously, minerals impact your hormones. If you have copper toxicity, that could impact, you said the iron in your heavy period. Like, there's so many elements of this that are relevant. But then there's also elements that we don't even think of that she sees from a whole picture. Health is a whole body thing.
Great.
Your whole body is relevant for health. And so there could be elements of your health that you think are very unrelated, and it's not. So the bitters that you mentioned, that's to help with nutrient absorption from your food. There's going to be a bitters side tangent. Back in the day, before we had hyperpalatable processed foods and stuff, you had to cook everything from scratch. In other cultures, there are a lot more bitter tasting foods. The American diet just doesn't have very many bitter tasting things. So think of like parsley.
Dandelion root. If you've ever eaten dandelion root from scratch, it's really intense. Like almost hard to eat plain.
Mm-hmm. Apparently your body can actually become accustomed to it. So once you start incorporating it into your diet more, it will not be as horrible of an experience. But those things make your body prepare to digest.
Okay.
So we don't have any of those bitter tasting foods in our diets anymore in America. In the standard American diet, it's completely missing.
Yeah.
Other things that do that are just like cooking your meal. If you're cooking your meal from scratch, the smells from the food, like that helps make your mouth start watering. It like is alerting your body that food is coming and that you are going to be eating it. But if you take a frozen meal out of the freezer and put it in the microwave and then you eat it, like your body has had no awareness of the fact that it's about to eat a meal. So to take some bitters like 20 minutes before you eat is supposed to be helpful for something like that.
What about, is this the same bitters that's in an old fashioned? Like those kinds of bitters?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so have a little cocktail before your meal. I don't know if that has the same effect, but yeah, it's the same
concept.
It's the same bitters.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the same substance.
Sure.
I don't know if it's the same concept, but the same substance.
Okay.
So Talisa approaches this whole thing very holistically. She's looking at your entire picture of health. Mm-hmm. And while the minerals and binding heavy metals are a huge part of the foundation of your health, there might be other elements that she picks up on that she thinks that you need to address. There's the mineral blend and the binder, and then you have these 4 other things.
Miscellaneous other
supplements that they're not miscellaneous. They're related. Then there's the 4 other supplements that weren't included in that.
Yeah.
If you were to just full send, take everything all at once as soon as it arrives, let's say your body has a reaction to something, you have no idea what it was.
Understood.
So I did a full send when I was getting started on my gut supplements.
And that's what had the MCAS situation. Yeah.
And it triggered a huge MCAS flare, and I didn't know which of the gut supplements did it. So I had to stop everything. And now I'm moving at a snail's pace, which is not my preferred pace at which to move. But
have you identified which it was?
I have a theory because I've added some of them back in and not had that flare. It really came down to like the full picture of where my nervous system was at and my stress levels, and then the gut supplement. And I tried it in my luteal phase, and I tried them all at once. So instead of giving my body, it was like
too much.
It was the worst combination of timings, but now I've added them in one by one. So first, you're not going to start with everything all at once. You're going to start with one at a time. That's the concept of sequencing. You don't have to do this, but you might pay the price like I did if you don't. So what I should have done with the gut supplements was just introduce one gut supplement at a time.
How many were there?
There was like 4.
Okay.
3 or 4 that I introduced at once.
Okay.
And when I say at once, I mean I was taking like 2 of them with a meal and then 1 of them in the evening. But when you do it that way, I had this crazy MCAS reaction, but I didn't know which of them it was.
Right.
So you're supposed to add one in at a time, give it like a week or a few days, however long you think you need, and then just see how you feel. And if your body is starting to feel weird, maybe take it every other day or stop it completely. And then maybe you start taking it, you feel good, then you can add in another one. And then once you feel good on that, add in another one, and so on.
Yeah.
So that concept is called sequencing. And then the second concept is called titration. And this one I thought was really interesting because it never occurred to me to do anything this way because I'm very all or nothing kind of a person. But the concept of titration is just to start small with one. So with the powder, it arrives and you take like a quarter of 1 scoop every day for a few days. And then you start to take a quarter of 1 scoop twice a day for a few days. And then over time, your full dose is 1 scoop twice a day. So 2 scoops a day.
Yeah.
Is your end goal. But you have to work your way up to it.
To make sure you feel normal.
And also, I think it's just like a shock to your system. I think if you were to take that full amount of minerals, it would be like taking a handful of multivitamins. Like you don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. So that's titrating, is just like starting a smaller dose and work your way up. And with something that's not a powder, it might look different. Like I'm taking this gut supplement right now. It's called Biocidin.
Mm-hmm.
And titration for that one is 1 drop every couple days. And
wow.
And then it's 1 drop one day, followed by 3 drops the next day, followed by 1 drop one day, 3 drops the next day. And some people do it totally different. Some people recommend you take 7 drops one day and then you skip 4 days. Like there's all different types of ways to approach these things
dosages
from different like functional medicine philosophies and different bodies and what they are sensitive to. Like me having MCAS and hypermobility and POTS and all these things, that puts me in the category of somebody with a highly sensitive body. You might not have a highly sensitive body. So
when I started taking
the
this stuff so far, I haven't noticed. I felt totally normal. Haven't noticed anything. But
you probably will continue to
feel fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if I take, let's use the bitters as an example. If I'm diligent, I take it every day for a week and then I skip 3 days. Is that bad? Bitters, or why is it bad?
Bitters aren't a good example of this because bitters are kind of like whatever.
Well, and I think that's a good point is like, how do I know how many of these supplements are like okay if I'm laissez-faire about versus not?
That is usually a good question for your functional medicine practitioner. Okay. But to me, I love to do research on these things. And so like I love to understand what bitters is doing.
Yeah.
To me, that's like a nice to have thing, but you don't have to be consistent with it because I think, well, what's going to happen if you're not? Probably nothing.
Okay.
I think that's kind of like an optional one that's just helpful. But for something like the Vitex for you, like that's a hormonal type of natural supplement that maybe influences estrogen.
Okay.
If that were me, I'd be way more careful about that. Like that one, I would be really aware of how often I'm taking it, how consistently I'm taking it. But I think it comes down to the person.
Yeah.
It depends on how complex your protocol is too. For me, my protocols are a lot, but I ask for more. I'm like, I want to do the most. Talisa does protocols for people who are like, I can barely do anything. Yeah. I need to start with the bare minimum and work my way up. So the protocol might be 2 things.
Well, and here's the thing too, like I just began this, but I think ultimately my personal goal would be to not have to take that much stuff. in the end, because I want to be able to either have it come from food or be able to reach a homeostasis that's at a high level of not needing supplementation. And is that even possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because this is such an important point, and I think this is probably the point where we can wrap it up.
Great.
But this is like the most important thing that I probably haven't said, but needs to be said. Because the answer is yes. Like, the goal is not to be on these things forever. This is why I did not want to keep working with my naturopath, who was trying to put me on all sorts of supplements to replace my hormones. I was like, why would I replace my hormones if we never uncovered what was causing this problem? For you, if it turns out that you had copper toxicity because of being on hormonal birth control for that long, then once you get the copper out of your body and you replenish the minerals that maybe it was causing to be off, you'll get to a place where your body can then maintain that on its own, and you won't need to be remineralizing anything. Your ratios will generally be in the right places, and you'll know what you need to do to take care of your body from your lifestyle choices to help keep your body in the best condition that it can be in. And then you might decide that you want to kind of live fast and loose and stay up late and eat fun things and like do whatever it is that you want to do that causes your minerals to maybe get a little bit out of balance. But at least you know how that is going to impact your full picture. Like, you can then get to a place where you get to make choices about your life and understand how they impact your body and your health.
Sure.
Versus before, when you didn't know you were making these choices, you didn't know the impact it would have. You didn't know birth control could give you copper toxicity.
Right.
Because nobody tells you those things.
Well, I think that's a good point too. It's like, okay, I know if I'm going to go out in the sun from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m., I'm going to put mineral sunscreen on my face because I know that exposing myself to the sun means I need sunscreen. I have that understanding. Ultimately, yeah, if I say I'm going to go out and stay up late, my circadian rhythm is going to be off, or maybe I know my minerals are going to be off, then I can take a choice to replenish it. But today, I don't know how to do that. And I think working with Talisa is going to teach me that what actions lead to reactions and how you make up for that based on understanding.
Yeah, two things. The first one is, it's not just working with Talisa that's going to teach you this. Anybody who's listening to this, anybody who starts to become aware of the fact that your actions and behaviors in your day-to-day life have an impact on your health, anybody who's listening can start to learn about how their environment and choices impact their body and their health and start to make more educated decisions. You can make the exact same decisions. If you want to stay up all night, if you want to be drinking every night, like if you want to eat whatever you want and do whatever it is, like you can do whatever you want. And I fully support that. There's some people whose bodies are so resilient to that stuff. And I am very envious of that. Like, I would love to have a more resilient body. And that's what I'm working towards, is to get my body to a place that is more resilient so that I can be a little bit more flexible with my lifestyle choices and with what I choose to do, because I want to be able to bounce back from it when I am not perfect. And when I do things that aren't the best choice for my health, my body should be able to recover from that. And right now I'm just in this place where it can't yet, but that's what I'm working to get towards. Yeah. I want to use your sunburn example. That's such a good example of like where you're at and how this all works, because like you said, you know that if you go out in the sun and you haven't put mineral sunscreen on, you're going to get sunburn. Yep. And then what happens? Your sunburn, you can't go out in the sun anymore.
At least for a while.
For like a few days. Mm-hmm. You have to like stay inside because you're sunburned. Mm-hmm. You know that. But let's say you'd never heard of sunburn. Nobody knew how it worked. You would have just gone out in the sun, gotten sunburn, and then been confused and been like, why does my face hurt? Why is my face red? Why is it like itchy and I don't know what happens when you get some peely. Yeah. And like you'd be like confused. You'd be like, why do I have all these symptoms? My face is peeling. It hurts. It's red. I don't understand what's wrong. And then go out in the sun the next day and be like, why is my face? And you don't know you're making it worse. But once you learn about it, you're like, oh, I can put on sunscreen. And if I get sunburn anyway, I now know I can put aloe on and I can stay out of the sun for a couple days, maybe ice it, do whatever it is people do. The point is that learning about this stuff, you don't have to work with a functional medicine practitioner. It's just about being aware. If you got sunburn and you never heard of it before, instead of beating yourself up about why is my face red and peely, you could say, what did I do differently today that I didn't do the day before? Like just starting to ask yourself these questions about your symptoms with curiosity, not with shame and not with anger or frustration, because it can be really frustrating. But if you start to approach the signs from your body with curiosity, then you start to ask better questions about it. And that can just help you make more informed decisions. So it doesn't mean you're never going to go out in the sun again if you know that you tend to get sunburned. It just means that you can be smarter about maybe what time of day you go out in the sun or how much time you spend in the sun or how much sunscreen you bring with you when you go. So like for me, if I'm going to be out of my house for a long period of time, I'll bring extra packets of electrolytes with me because I know I get dehydrated more easily than I used to. Doesn't mean I can't leave the house anymore. It
Sure.
just means that I can arm myself with better tools because I understand my body better. And it won't be like that forever. But while I'm in this extra fragile place, I just need a little bit of extra care. So while you're getting yourself remineralized, doesn't mean you're going to be on these things forever. It just means that you're starting to learn about your symptoms and starting to ask better questions about them. And over time, your picture of health can look way different than you ever thought it would.
Yeah. I think even just recognizing, it's how are you recognizing symptoms? And I think I want to spend another session talking about recognizing symptoms. What does that even mean? I'm grateful to work with Talisa to start this identification journey because I feel really uncertain, but you are going to help equip your listeners with understanding little ways to do self-evaluation and take care and try to be our own self-advocates because it's not obvious. I think that's a really important thing to end on is saying like our bodies are super complex and you may just not understand what your body is trying to tell you. And I think in my case, only when I have obvious symptoms do I really know what to do. And so this is about trying to evaluate, taking steps towards the right direction, and then reevaluating again. So I'm excited to learn more about your round 3 of your hair tissue mineral analysis. But frankly, 4 and 5 are going to be even more exciting.
Yeah.
So
it's all really cool. It's cool to see progress.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that you're doing it too, because when I went into it, I was in such poor health. My body was crying out for help in every way it could. And I was going into it because I was at my lowest point in functioning. You, on the other hand, are going into it with a really good level of health.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be really cool to hear about your experience and the benefits that you see, if any.
Yep.
And I'm excited to hear more of the things that you discover along the way on your journey. And it'll be cool for listeners to be able to see a comparison. Like you don't have to be on the verge of dying to get a benefit from this. Anyone in any level of health could benefit from this if they are seeing any symptoms in their life. There's always questions that you can answer about what might be causing it.
Yeah.
But 2 very different health profiles might benefit from it. So it'll be cool to go over that.
Yep. Time will tell.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope that something in here was helpful for you, and we'll be doing more.
Tune in next time. Bye.
Bye.